Hello, everybody, and this is JDO with JdoRadio, coming at you live from the recording booth, or rather, my computer desk. Close enough. Welcome to the new age of radio. And today's story is going to be part 2 of the last story we were reading, and that is DreadAR. I'm excited to continue doing this. I do apologize for not getting anything up last week, I believe. I was quite busy, unfortunately, and didn't have time to record anything. Now I'm going to try to get a backlog at this point, and we shall see what happens. Alright, let's get right into the story. This is DreadAR Part 2. Something was different about this one. The other two I'd seen before never acted like I existed. This one, however, was looking directly at me and greeting me. I took a few steps forward. As I looked toward the spirit, I noticed that the man in the zoot suit was bald and with gaunt features. His skin was pale, almost the color of chalk. He was tall, and his clothes were very clean, unlike the others who had clothes covered in blood stains, and that looked disheveled at best. I immediately closed the app and put the phone back in my pocket. It was just an app after all. Nothing more than lines of code that had access to my camera and put ghosts in front of me. There was no possible way for an app to see the dead. As I kept walking towards the store, my phone continued to vibrate, but I chose to ignore it. It calmed down once I got inside, and I browsed around the store for a few minutes just to settle my nerves. I picked up a couple of things and stood in line when I felt my phone start to vibrate in my pocket again. I did my best to ignore it, but the buzzing and vibrating kept happening. It was driving me crazy, so I finally pulled out my phone and opened it. I looked around the store for a few seconds and noticed a few spirits wandering around, mostly aimlessly like before. I turned around to see if anything was behind me, and that was when I saw him again. He was standing about 30 feet behind me, once again, just looking directly at me. I immediately started to feel uncomfortable again as he stood there, motionless, watching me. That's when I noticed something else. The other spirits in the store were starting to stare at me too. I quickly checked out my items and walked as quickly as I could back to my apartment. All the while, my phone was buzzing endlessly in my pocket. When I made it back home, I locked the doors and sat down on my couch. I pulled out my phone. It was finally not buzzing, and I selected the app to uninstall it. After a few prompts, asking if I was sure, which at this point I was absolutely positive that I wanted it off my phone, it was gone. I restarted my phone just to make sure DreadAR was nowhere to be found, and to my relief, it wasn't. My nerves started to settle down, and I was finally able to relax. The app was gone, and I wasn't being flooded with notifications. I turned on the television and started to watch a show while I snacked. I thought maybe I was a coward for uninstalling the app. It was just way too real for me, especially after the death of a close friend. As I watched the television, I felt myself starting to drift into sleep. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing again. It kept vibrating over and over. I assumed someone was trying to call me or was flooding me with text messages. I shuffled around and looking for my phone when I realized it was sitting on the coffee table. The phone was just laying there, vibrating. When I grabbed the phone, I noticed it had a new notification from DreadAR. I found this impossible because I had just deleted the app from my phone. I was positive that it was gone before I ever fell asleep. That did not matter though, because the app was right in front of my face telling me that I was not alone again. I tried to turn my phone off, but it would not power down no matter what I did. It just kept buzzing and showing me the notification. I decided to open the app, and when I pointed it directly in front of me, I was shocked. The sight of what I saw made my entire body tense up from head to toe. What I was seeing could not be actually happening, but it was. Standing right in front of me was my friend, Brendan. His clothes were damp and he had scratch marks underneath his eyes. I sat on the couch, stiff and frozen in terror as I saw my dead friend on my camera screen. I looked above my phone to notice nothing but the empty room. But when I looked back at the camera, he was standing right there in front of me. He tried to open his mouth as if he was trying to say something, but all that came out was brown-colored water. After a few moments, he turned his head and pointed it at the window. I walked slowly to the window and looked outside. I didn't see anything in the courtyard, except for the cover of night. I pulled up my phone and looked again, to my horror, to see the bald, pale man standing outside of my window, directly looking at me. He let out a sick smile, showing his teeth, which were jagged and crooked. I turned around to look at Brendan again. He stood still, as if he was crying, with more water leaving his mouth every time he opened it. The sound was sickening, as if he was vomiting over and over again. I had enough of this. I closed the app and grabbed my car keys, then left my apartment. I got in my car and started to drive across town. I had to get as far away from all of this madness as I possibly could. I thought of telling someone, but who would believe me about the phone app seeing dead people? My phone kept vibrating, but I chose to ignore it until I made a good distance from my place. I finally made it to the other side of town and noticed my car was getting low on gas. I pulled into the nearest gas station and filled up my tank. My phone started to vibrate again. When I lifted the phone up, I did not see a notification, but the app was open on its own. I looked forward and saw the bald, pale man smiling at me once again. He started to walk towards me and I tossed my phone onto the ground. That wasn't enough though, because when I lifted up my head, I noticed he was still walking towards me in our reality. So, heed my warning. If anyone ever sends you a link for an app called DreadAR, ignore it and delete it immediately. I don't know how, but whoever created this app has created a door that is better off closed. Thank you very much for listening to JdoRadio today with me, folks. That's going to be the end of the DreadAR series, and I'm looking very much forward to reading our next story. I thank you again for joining me on this wonderful Friday night, and I hope to see you again soon. And this will be JDO signing off for the night for JDO Radio.